Hey, how's it going, everyone? So today I'm going to be doing a follow-up video, a video of movies from the 2000s, but I thought it'd be easier for myself to simplify it and to really break it down and isolate it, which is I came up with a list of my top 10 movie franchises from the 2000s. So my number one franchise movie from the 2000s goes to Lord of the Rings. Still to this day, every time I watch any of those movies, and I've been watching those movies for over 20 years, there are things that I still catch and still miss, or clues or whatever, Easter eggs, like things that I still catch. It's because of Peter Jackson's writing, some of the thickest screenplay, the writing of storytelling, and Peter Jackson does that wonderfully. There's all these different timeline stories going on simultaneously, with Aragorn and Legolas and Ghibli, and Gandalf, and like all these stories happening all at once. And that's what I love about that franchise, is that it just keeps it fresh, it keeps it in, it just keeps the momentum going. And when I look at it, Lord of the Rings really is pretty much one of the heaviest screenplay storytelling movies by far. I remember going and seeing The Fellowship of the Ring, but honestly it was like a blur. I really don't even remember it. And then it wasn't until I saw The Two Towers, which is my favorite Lord of the Rings. I mean, if I had to choose one out of the three, it would be The Two Towers, because that one was, once again, that one was always on a loop. The action was just insane. The storytelling was just getting right to it. The pace of it, everything about that movie was just, it's one of my favorite movies in general. And then the third one with Return of the King, it ends on such a high note with the way it concludes. The only character that would stress me out was stupid Frodo sometimes. First one, he would just get stabbed. He'd just be like, "Oh, well, technically," got stabbed like 3 times in the movie. And the second one, he's just like confused all the time. He's like, "Oh, what do we do, Sam? Sam!" And then the third one, he's just like, "No. Thump, thump." And even visually, it was amazing watching that movie. I think that's why I loved it so much, because it was in New Zealand, and the landscapes, it's just it was just totally different from anything I've seen. And those movies, once again, they still hold up to this day, and they're way ahead of our time. And I would say, yeah, they're my number one franchises of the 2000s, growing up watching those. So, yeah. Next, we have the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. To simplify it, it was Christopher Nolan's approach to the Batman trilogy was the best realistic, grounded Batman movie by far for the 2000s. The first film was already awesome, never really getting that Batman origin movie. That was an amazing movie. The second one, The Dark Knight, which is my favorite because of Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, end of story. And then the third one, which was The Dark Knight Rises. That one ended on a high note too. But once again, I loved watching these movies in the theater. Christopher Nolan's style, the score by Hans Zimmer, just everything about it. Just amazing years for those Batman films. So yeah. Next, we have the Star Wars prequels, which is Phantom of the Menace, Attack of the Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith. All these movies were huge in the 2000s. Attack of the Clone Wars was one of the first Star Wars movies to come out of the 2000s, and that one was visually amazing. Just the action was just on point. It just got cooking in there, That movie was amazing. Seeing Jango Fett and seeing Yoda for the first time with his lightsaber fight and duel, that was crazy. And he's flipping around everywhere. And yeah, just visually that movie was amazing. I just remember. And then going into Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas pretty much gives you the most emotional Star Wars movie, with Anakin finally turning to the dark side, and and it was such an amazing character development, but also dramatic change for Anakin Skywalker. And those movies I remember watching in the theater. I remember people were crying. I remember people were cheering. I'll never forget those feelings of watching the earlier Star Wars movies. All the new ones I don't want to get into because those are the ones I don't watch at all. But 1, 2, and 3 I still watch to this day, and I mean, I don't know what else to say. Next, we have the Spider-Man franchise, and man, those movies were so awesome. They were just so huge, box office wise, globally, everything. I just always seen the commercials. I remember all the time, and I remember actually seeing the first Spider-Man, and I remember I watched it in a Tinseltown back in the day, and I remember seeing like a mile or 2 miles of a line of people waiting to see this movie, and they were camping out. The excitement just kept building and building because it's a Spider-Man movie, and I remember seeing the trailer and the commercials, and I was like, there's a Spider-Man movie, like what the hell. I still enjoy those movies all the time. I watch them. I still like watching them. Next, we have the X-Men franchise. The X-Men movies were pretty much the start of all the Marvel movies, really. It was basically like the Avengers, because it's about a team of people. And, this early stages of Marvel in the 2000s, they influenced so many other movies, all these other dark Marvel movies that started following after. But it's because of X-Men, and it's one of my favorite franchises by far. I would always have X-Men 1 and 2 always on a loop. The third one, yeah, I would watch it, but I don't know, for some reason, X-Men 2 that was my favorite. I think it's because of the whole Wolverine origin story. I started becoming more invested with Wolverine's character, and then we all know how that goes with Wolverine's storyline. But yeah, those movies will still always be a favorite of mine. Next, we have the Mission Impossible franchise. I know the earliest one was in the 90s. The first Mission Impossible, I think it was like 93 or 96, I believe. But the one I always pretty much remember watching all the time, I remember watching this movie on my dad's computer when I was a kid, which was the Mission Impossible 2. And that's the one I remember. That was the game changer. And like with Tom Cruise doing the rock climbing, the running, the motorcycle chases and all that. And then through time, they just started getting better. Each one that followed up after the second one, they got better and better and better, and the story was getting better, the action was getting more intense, and then it just became real intense. By the fourth one, that's when it was like all Tom Cruise doing all his stunts, and then the fifth one and sixth one, and yeah, that is probably one of my favorite franchises as of right now that are still going on, that I'm looking forward to seeing again in the theaters. So I'm excited about that. So yeah. So coming in at number 7, we have the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Again, watching these movies in the 2000s, all these movies that have came out, they just blew up. The Lord of the Rings franchise, the Batman franchise, the Spider-Man franchise, the X-Men franchise. All these movies were just blowing up. And then all of a sudden, it just became a favorite for everyone in the 2000s. And watching Johnny Depp play Jack Sparrow is by far my favorite role for him. And yeah, I remember watching the trailer with the pirates in the ocean, and they're walking, and then the moonlight shines on their faces and their skeletons, and man, it was such an amazing movie. Just everything about it, just from beginning to end, it was just so cool. And the score again by Hans Zimmer, the melody, oh my gosh. And then it just turned into this big franchise, So next we have Transformers. Talk about excitement and and just intensity. Once again, visually, this movie is amazing. Seeing a robot transform into a car, or a car transform into a robot, just awesome. I still never thought the day we would ever get a live-action Transformers movie. But, I would say my favorite are probably 1, 2, and 3. The fourth one was okay, and then the fifth one, that's kind of when I was already like, okay, this is kind of getting redundant now. Like, they're just throwing in whatever. There's just cars flying around, and it's coming out cross-eyed, in the theater, because just there's too much happening. But The first three are probably my favorite out of all the Transformers. They were so good. Next, we have the Harry Potter franchise. I actually did not watch the Harry Potter franchise. Hold on. I did not watch it up until recently. It's not that I didn't grow up with it. I just didn't see it. I never got around seeing it. And honestly, there is another reason why I never saw it. It's because my mother, I remember she told me, she's like, you better not be watching that movie. You know, she was just so against those movies, you know, and anything that had witches and wizards. But I'm like, I saw Lord of the Rings. That movie's just as worse, you know. It had all that, but for some reason, the Harry Potter, she told me, you better not be going and seeing that movie, you know. So I never saw these movies in the theater. So, but I did finally watch barely like a few years ago, and they were amazing, and I liked them, and each one got better and better, and just the kids, you know, you're growing up watching the kids get older, and Harry Potter's storyline just keeps evolving, and it keeps you guessing what's going to happen, you know. And so, but I do say that it is an amazing franchise for the 2000s. I just personally missed out, so I'm sorry. So my last franchise growing up, I would say is pretty much the Marvel franchise in general. The reason why I have it at my number 10 is because the Marvel now is not the Marvel I knew, though, back when it first started in 2008, I believe, with the first Iron Man movie. It does not feel the same to me anymore. It's kind of the way I see some of the Star Wars movies, the ones now, you know, not the TV series, but the recent Star Wars movies. Those are the ones I still feel like I don't really get into anymore. And it's kind of the same feeling I have with some of these Marvel movies and some of the TV shows. I just feel like they're either good or they're either bad or they're a near miss. The early mid 2000s Marvel movies is pretty much what I grew up watching. But my favorites are from 2008 and 2018. Those are my personal favorite movies for that time. So anyway, there you guys have it. Those are my favorite movie franchises from the 2000s. And so hopefully you guys like this video. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys' favorite movie or franchise from the 2000s was. So yeah. All right, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye.